Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Elio. Kind of a hard movie to talk about. I did see this movie before the Hollywood Reporter article came out that kind of revealed what happened behind the scenes and everything. And I will talk about the film apart from that. And I do believe normally, as you're reviewing a movie, you should review the movie that it is, not what it isn't, which is definitely a criticism thing you should adhere to. However, at the same time, there's also the story of what an artist or a studio or whoever creatively decides not to put in their film, and what they're not saying can sometimes say more or say a lot about the film than what the film is actually saying. They can communicate on various different levels. I've said that before about films like, Oppenheimer not having any Japanese people, or the Fabelmans sort of not really fully telling what the deal was with Spielberg's parents. But I will be talking about both things, and I do think they're both important to understanding your enjoyment of the film and how I feel about the movie in general. And so, understand that going forth. But I'll talk about the movie itself first. Elio is a film that kind of, I don't think this is, it's not top tier Pixar, no one's claiming that, but with everything about like its feelings on space exploration to its Carl Sagan audio drops, there's Carl Sagan needle drops in this, and everything about sharing and communicating and stuff. It's about a little boy who wants to get abducted by aliens, wants to go to a different world, ends up doing it, gets on this galactic council, and he meets Glorden and all this like worm centipede creature or whatever, and all this kind of crazy stuff happens because they think he is, the ruler of Earth when he's not, and kind of just a collision course to wackiness, basically. But why I say it's kind of outdated is a film it really reminded me of was the film Arrival. And when that film came out on, let's say, the Friday after Trump was elected, like the first time. And that felt like this hopeful sort of beacon. Like I felt very emotional. Like I don't think people would work together again. And almost felt like it was kind of saying like one day maybe we'll get back to that, or something like that. And I think all these years later, I don't think Arrival would hit the same. I think how your release sort of does matter a bit to your legacy, and as a art form, I understand you're supposed to separate those things, and as time goes on, some of these films, and particularly Disney films, get separated from that. But I'm reviewing this at the time it was released. I don't think that idea of sharing and communicating and be able to work out ages as well, or even seems even very realistic at this point. Now I understand it's a kids movie, and these kids probably, some of them might not even care or know who the president is. That's like a kind of fundamental thing, but you get what I'm saying, is like it doesn't matter to them. I do think there's a spirit in this film that's about being an isolated, lonely kid who's caring about like this thing that nobody else gives a shit about, and all this stuff about science and understanding and learning and education being cool and everything, that I'm sure there's a lot of kids this film will mean a lot to. And I'm sure when they find out what actually happened with this film, they will feel differently, or maybe say, I don't care about that, it still means a lot to me. And I didn't want to do this review and sort of like discount those feelings, because I think those feelings will be there, especially with, I know Disney like monetizes and weaponizes nostalgia and how you feel about their films, but I have seen people affected by their films, and I have myself, and I think that is a real thing, or Pixar or whomever. But I do like a certain, the idea of like, this kid who just wants to talk on his radio. I've definitely been in sleepaway camps where people tried to beat me up for being different. Thankfully it worked out. Didn't get as bad as his did, but I definitely understand that world. But I also like the idea of him having this idea, dealing with aliens, and having this kind of like fun kid, like maybe Flight of the Navigator adjacent sort of thing that he is going. And it's cute to see a kid who's like so in love with all this stuff, like go into space. That is fun. That's like Last Starfighter kind of shit, man. That's like your dream as a kid. Like you get to do the thing you've dreamed of and you've imagined so much. It's fun seeing someone be enthusiastic on screen. It's also amazing seeing like a original animated family film, things that are dominating the family landscape are cynical live action remakes of animated things that are just there to, curb nostalgia. I like that they did something else with this, and I think, I don't know if like other people really like Pixar doing sci-fi, and it doesn't really seem to work out for them, both creatively and financially. I think this is probably a better movie than Lightyear. I don't know if anyone's going to fight me on that one, but it's really a film that I think speaks to, the weird, strange kid in school who really believes in the sci-fi stuff and wants it to be different and wants everyone to come together and really believes in stuff. And that's a hard life to go through when you're a kid. And I think it's like sort of a beacon of hope for someone, and it plays like that, I think there's certain things like this plays like kind of, I feel like a Saturday morning show probably could have done this. This isn't as original or a different idea. It doesn't take any kind of interesting creative leaps that make you go like, oh, wow, nobody talked for 30 minutes, or they really summed up the whole relationship with his parents at the beginning. Like, there's nothing like, it doesn't have to do what, Wall-E and Up and all this stuff did, but like, there's no shots where I was like, oh my God. It was sort of like just like a finely tight animated film directed by pretty smart directors. One of the directors, Shi, who is more known for Turning Red and Bao, also is an animator on Wander Over Yonder. You can tell it's someone who has a background with that, understands how to do animated sci-fi. Very few. I don't think any of the creatures were on two legs and stuff. They're all different aliens. Like, remind me of when I reviewed the original Lilo and Stitch. Like, one cool thing animation can really do is like do all sorts of weird alien things, and I really actually like that a lot. That's a more interesting version of sci-fi. And if you're going to do sci-fi in animation, you might as well do it. But I think in some cases, and that this came out the same weekend as K-pop Demon Hunters, this feels like Pixar has rested on too much that they've been redoing. Like, this is the same kind of Pixar-y character design. This is the same kind of animation. We're not getting these huge artistic leaps with this. This really just feels like them trying to like fill out, just not doing anything too different. It just feels like sort of, this is a standard sort of Pixar in a lot of ways. It's very good at doing that, and Pixar's still a very good studio. We haven't reached Cars 2 levels. I guess that's the worst one. That's the worst one, I think, that everyone agrees upon. I think it's like, this is probably like Bug's Life, where like, you'll watch and go, oh, that was solid, but it's not going to blow you away or change your mind. There's certain people it will emotionally mean more to, but to me, like, the animation, seeing everything that's going on with animation, seeing Pixar kind of being in the stale stasis with it, has gotten really dull. And I'm just like, do I have to see the Pixar design? Like, how come like DreamWorks can evolve, but Pixar just refuses for whatever reason? I don't know if it's a brand thing or they're just lazy. I kind of speculate that it's probably a bit of both. I don't actually think Elio's 11. I don't, I'm not trying to, speak on anyone's real sexuality. I didn't really get the impression that that's who he's attracted to is even on his mind. I don't love that every time there's an isolated character, the assumption is that they're queer. I'm not assuming they're straight either. They could be asexual. I was not thinking about whether he's, going to, have a wife or a girlfriend or whatever, or a boyfriend or whatever's happening with him. That was not really on my mind. I don't think that should be projected necessarily, unless there's some bit of truth there or you have a reason to think that. In the film itself that I saw in theaters, I did not feel that way. From the character of Elio I saw in the movie Elio, which I saw in theaters. However, hearing about what happened on behind the scenes with Adrian Molina, who is openly gay, and his Elio that was very much based on his experience was taken away from him, basically because Pixar is nervous that if anything gay happens, they'll get canceled or something because of the failure of Lightyear. Even though if I were them, I'd go, oh, maybe the sci-fi thing, maybe that's the thing that doesn't work out for us. Whatever. They've just decided it's the gay thing, as Hollywood always learns the wrong lesson. And due to various things, like where, Pete Docter and him had a really bad meeting in front of everyone, and that a test screening went very badly and all those things. Hearing about how this was a gay filmmaker's story about his life, and like even America Ferrera, who was involved in this project before, quit because of that, definitely changes a bit how you feel about this film. And I don't mean to be gossipy and use that on Elio. And I actually really love Pixar. I think I've seen them all. I've tried to review as many as possible. I think it's an amazing studio. But them doing this, I think, really messes it up, because when you hear like, I mean, the thing is, we haven't seen this movie, and the movie that they're saying is so much better, and no one has. So it's just speculation. But hearing about how this was taken away from someone, and it feels like when you're watching the film, it's about a little boy so into science, and that means so much, and you can tell it'll mean so much to so many kids, and you'll reflect on that happening before. But hearing how that this little boy who is just isolated by himself and is trying to reach out to people, and seeing a grown man be able to reach the levels where who co-directed Coco and helped write the story, and supposedly is making Coco too. I feel like that is not happening, but whatever. That he has that taken away from him. That the idea of like he's reached out, he helped make Coco what it was. Or one of the elements that made Coco what it was, and he was able to do these things. He's reached this level, and he can't tell his story, is a sad element to this, and I think it will overshadow a lot of the legacy of this film, unfortunately. Especially because it's probably the least cynical family film out right now, and hearing how it was also changed for cynical reasons. It wasn't just, remade for corporate market share, although I guess it was changed for corporate market share. So this is just as cynical as a live action remake. This sucks, dude. What the fuck is this industry? Oh my god. But hearing how it was changed for homophobic reasons, and artistically, especially from a studio head like Pete Docter, who got to make his artistic statement with Soul. It kind of, which, that wasn't very good, but I don't know, I have mixed feelings on that movie now, but I just feel, hearing how this was erased, particularly, obviously Pride Month and all that, but hearing about all that, it just makes me feel mixed about this film. It makes me have reservations about it, because the fact that it was taken away from someone, and you can kind of read into certain elements, but the only thing you can is read into them because there's supposed to be a little more there, I think hurts this film. And I think one of the things that hurts Pixar in general, because this is an auteur studio ripping an auteur's vision away. That's why animation auteur studios were created in the first place. So if you're not honoring the really, why this studio is the way it is, then I kind of question what the fuck the point is. It just sounds like you have, Disney animation, and then, that other Disney animation, but it's like labeled something else. It doesn't, there's not much of a point at this point. Like, you don't need to churn out original animated films, and particularly when you're using the same design, it doesn't feel like you're reinventing the wheel anymore. And someone offers you that and you turn it away, kind of makes you feel like, Elio himself would not be welcome with his artistic vision at Pixar, but they can exploit that story to make a movie, to make money off of him. Doesn't really make you feel good. I think Elio is a strong, kind of solid film. When I went with my family, I haven't really heard my kids talk about it very much, which isn't a great sign to my mind. It wasn't like, The Day the Earth Blew Up, they kept referencing for a few weeks. Though we did end up seeing it in the same theater, literally the same theater in a multiplex as The Day the Earth Blew Up, which I guess is not a good sign for financial success. I think it's actually a solid film, and I think it can... A lot of people will see this without ever having to read that, having to understand that article and what happened behind the scenes, and will feel things about that. And if you're watching this and say, I don't care about all that, I still like the movie, you can do that. I don't see the problem with it. Just because it's a cynical message, or why it was changed for cynical reasons, doesn't mean that if you take from it something that isn't cynical, that you're wrong, or that I say it's cynical, that your feelings are wrong. That's not how any of this works. I know comment sections might feel differently, but it's not. I think it is a decently solid film. I think there will be outsider kids who get way too into it, and you know what? Go off. Like, have fun, trying to make your own thing with it, understand what it was. I hope Adrian Molina is able to go on and do his actual vision at some point, or that the original cut is released in some way, because clearly This cut did not financially work out, so I don't really see what the problem would be in releasing that, but I'm sure they won't. I think artistically, Pixar as a studio is not in a great place, and I think the making of this film emphasizes that. And maybe this film itself being like, you look at what else is going on in feature animation, and then you look at this doesn't feel as alive as you think, really. But at the same point, if I'm just looking at this film isolated, I do think it's a solid film about an outsider going to space. I do think it is good. Those Carl Sagan, I don't know everything about Carl Sagan. I have generally positive views of him. I've never read a biography or anything, but hearing kids listen to those quotes is a good thing. Did they just throw them in there with no context? Yes, they did, and that was a dumb idea, and I don't think they landed because of that necessarily. But the fact that they're trying to do that, or trying to see people move together, the fact that they had an ALF reference, I love an ALF reference. Thank you, Melmac. All that stuff is it's a fun, solid kids film, and we need more animated and family films like this in today's day and age. I just wish it had been done in a more positive, auteur vision way. It feels like this is more of a sign of Pixar not understanding why they are Pixar, and them sort of just being the machine, which is why people outside of Disney animation started, because they didn't want to be part of the machine. Once you become the machine, you have absolutely failed. And I think this is, in terms of behind the scenes and taking someone's vision away and messing it up and then failing, I would say that this is sort of studio wise a total failure and misunderstanding of what they're supposed to be. As a film by itself, I think it's an enjoyable time for the whole family. You can decide how you feel about it, but I had a good enough time. I thought it was fine. I didn't expect high things or that it was going to change my mind, but I am a little disgusted that we're still afraid of letting Pixar really be the kind of studio that it was built to be, instead of the market and Disney and Bob Iger deciding what it should be. And you'll never have real original, different kind of original voice that inspires kids like Elio without that in Pixar. Without it, it's just more the kids who beat up Elio than the kid who would actually go to space. So if you've seen Elio and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.